Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Mind Shift. It's a podcast where we explore living a life without limits with those that are dedicated to achieving that. I'm Sridhar, and I'm your host, and my very special guest today is Keith Barrett. And Keith, I've been really looking forward to this. There's always gems on this podcast, and when I think of you, some people just have a real gift in life, but sometimes we can have challenges, right? And you're just such a testament to that. When you have the courage to address those those challenges, what can happen in your life, and how can you burgeon as a person, professionally and everything. And I've been really looking forward, and we've been talking about this for a while, and I've been so looking forward to having you on. So, firstly, thanks for being on the podcast. Thanks for being a guest.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Sridhar.
It's real pleasure. So, generally what we do on the Mind Shift is we kind of throw you in the deep end. And I know that you've been doing some really dedicated work for some period of time now, and covering some different things. But usually, if you could say one thing, because our viewers, our listeners, are about living a life without any limits and addressing them when they're there. What's one thing you would say to someone watching if they said, "Well, how do I live a life without limits?" What's one thing that you've learned and applied that you would share with them?
I think it's probably the most important thing for me in the work that we've done is exploring and understanding the sort of mechanisms that existed within myself and what I believed about myself up to a certain point in time, which that can be translated into, it maybe show up as imposter syndrome for people. So I had a collection of these assumptions about myself that kind of show up in a way that is not imminently obvious. It is subconscious. It is the framing that I put around myself, around my business, around what I aspire to achieve. And I've always wanted to try and unlock some of that thinking, which is how you and I ended up working together. And that was the first piece of work that we did, was breaking down and kind of distilling what it was I believed about myself, which were causing the limitations that existed, and then unlocking them one by one, and that cumulatively growing as we went further down the line. So I think there's a kind of long-winded way of saying that it is understanding deeply who I am as a person and dispelling the myths about myself that I believed that were untrue.
Well, that's a powerful start. And what brought you to the place where you wanted to explore something like that? Like I know you probably didn't get, when you arrived, I think, somebody I have worked with and a mutual friend sort of let you know about what he had achieved here. But what made you, what brought you to the questioning process of it, to even start looking at that? What was happening, what brought you?
So as with many things, it is a moment of crisis that leads you to go look for assistance and look for help. But I think the runway to that existed before, which I can articulate a little bit. But I think I've worked in I've lived in 5 cities in 3 countries. I've moved around a lot. That comes with a certain set of realities, either when I migrated to Australia 21 years ago, or when I launched my business 8 years ago. And across that entire time, I've always wanted to expand my thinking and invest some time in myself. But particularly when I became a father and then a business owner, it just became more and more difficult to find the time to do that work. And then, of course, when we met, I had a business issue. I had been building my business on the assumption that, for the purpose of your readers, I own a PR firm and was an editor for 20 years. And I was building a business that was really engineered to grow the content side of my work. And it didn't pan out, but I had invested a lot of money. I'd hired staff. I'd opened an office. And all of that became redundant fairly quickly, and I needed to recalibrate my business. And that's a difficult thing to work through, is when you realize that you've erred in your decision making and now you need to unwind it. So that was the catalyst for you and I to meet based on a referral. But the work was immediately around, let's get stuck into my state of mind around all this change that was occurring. But that's what brought me to the work.
Yeah, and and I talked about a gift earlier, and I knew things would unpack as we continued to speak. And I can't really take anything from you, because I was about to say your gift in your work, which you just have this tremendous gift, and people see it, and extremely really great at what you do, both in the publications and editing, and your public relations work and everything that you do. You've just got a tremendous gift, and people see that. But I've come to know you over a period of time, and more recently, I've come to know about your gifts as a father. I was really blown away by getting a chance to see you in action with one of your children. Got a chance to meet her and your daughter, and just seeing how you were as a dad. And so when I think about a gift this is what I mean by I think a lot of people can relate to this. Like you've got a tremendous gift, and how do you end up in those situations, right? And yet that's what happens. And it's like when you're this testament, and again, I use that word, like what I would hope for people to do is, if you've got something and you have a great gift in your life, don't let challenging times take you down. Don't let them take you out. And I know that when you arrived, it was heavy, and you were dealing with some real things, and you're a really genuine guy. You care about people, and I think that was weighing maybe even doubly heavy on you. But there's two ways. I've always known there's two ways you can go when that happens. When big challenges occur, and they just occur for everyone. We all feel like, oh, it's me, I'm failing or something, but it's just life. It happens that way. And there's a lot of people that fold at that time. There's a lot of people that just say, well, that's kind of it. And then there's the people like you that say, they just can't give up, right? And that's what I saw in you when you first arrived. It's just, I'm getting through this. I don't know how, but I'm going to. And it's that it's just that gift that you have. So I guess what I would ask of you is just, when you said that, what makes you keep going? What had you continue to go, I'm going to deal with this rather than let it get on top of me?
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up family, because I think a byproduct of the work that I've done on myself is that when you actually strip away some of these kind of false beliefs or impressions about yourself, and you get some clarity, it certainly allowed me to understand, maybe not understand, but for example, as a small business owner, your priorities, well, my priorities were sustain the business, find new clients, make sure all my staff get paid, they can pay their mortgages, and family life become secondary to that, which is almost an obsession, which I suppose it's a sort of a obligatory obsession if you're running a small business, but family is really vitally important to me. It's my eldest left this morning on an excursion for 3 days. She's 11. It's her first time being away for that period of time. So I've been flat all morning, looking forward to this conversation to get my blood going again. But I think failure is not an option when you're doing the work that I do. We do pro bono work for not-for-profits. They depend on us being able to amplify their message to help them get funds in. PR is a very generalist term. PR really doesn't capture what we do. I think we do very executive level strategic counsel. I carry that weight of responsibility to these businesses and these clients, very deeply, and shutting up shop and just stopping because it was hard was never going to be an option. I think as you'll appreciate, Sridhar, if you're a migrant and you've moved around the world, you've faced challenges in various ways in across our lives. So facing adversity isn't necessarily something that would derail. But there are times that, particularly when you and I met, there was times when I absolutely needed help. I knew that there was a path forward, but you just can't get out of this cycle of you're perpetuating your own failures because you believe in your heart that you may not have what it takes to achieve what you know you need to achieve. So I think it requires some dedication to sit with yourself and to go through the process of unblocking those. And it is a process, and it does take time. But the fruits of doing that have been immeasurable. My life has completely changed from 2 years ago in almost every facet. How I am with my family, supporting my wife launching a business. We won the Agency of the Year in June last year. These are all milestones that it was difficult to foresee them as possible 2 years ago. But kind of the minute we had made some progress on breaking down these self-assumptions, everything really changed. And it changes in a way that's sometimes hard to articulate. It's more just that I think differently. I have a longer time horizon. I don't get derailed with short-term challenges. I find it easier to plan with confidence, expanding visions of what my future looks like, because I know I have the capability to achieve them, rather than previously where it's like a rat race of find clients, send invoice, chase late invoice, pay staff, and you can't really look that far into the future.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, there was a lot in that.
Sorry, I
Oh
tend to.
no, 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 be. This is what, like when we started this podcast. What was, I think as we listen, it becomes obvious that the kind of conversation we're having is not every day. It's not common, and I think you would probably agree with me that some of the approaches that we've had and the things that we've done aren't everyday conversations, right? They're like, I know when some of these gifts, I call them gifts, were brought to me, and some of the questions that we delve into, and some of the concepts that we deal with, I just never knew. Like I had no idea. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. Is my mission has always been to help as many people as possible to get the gift I was given, which was to wake up from a slumber I was in. Right, I was in a difficult way, and a really hard time. People know about my drug addiction by now, and homelessness, and understanding that my mind is believing my thoughts is what got me there, and my whole mind got me there. And once I got woken up to that, which I had no idea, I just blamed the world. I blamed everybody else and what was going on. But once I realized then that was the way out too. Like that was the way into a new life. And that's something that I hope to create for everyone. It's really why the Mind Shift got started in the beginning was, I could see what amazing people like you were doing with your own processes. And I thought, what if we put something together where people could hear that and maybe get gems in their own life? Just, sometimes you can hear something that just triggers a change, or sometimes even triggers a transformation. And so I just thought, I know I'm blessed with working with so many amazing people, obviously, like you. And I thought, well, what if, we could ask some questions and get some gems from each person. And you've given us one. I just wanted to go back a little bit. Like I'm super keen to unpack, because you've said some powerful things. And if you're happy to, I'd love to unpack like a little or a lot more about how that process happened. Like you were just saying, in 2 years' time, what you've done, and I've known the transformation you've experienced, and it's real. Like every area of your life, I can see what you've done in it, right? And some extraordinary things, like you said, winning the Agency of the Year, which is a big deal, But I think what really moves me the most, I don't know why, is just watching who you are with your family in the meantime, and watching who you are in yourself, and just being a good guy. It's just like a genuine guy. But I want to go back just first, because you dropped a gem bomb, I call them, and which was just, if people are listening, they go, well, how do I move from here to there? You said something simple but incredibly powerful, and that is, you said, I just ask for help. And I think if I look back at where I got to, where I am now, and how I've got there, how could I get there without asking for help? And I think just the courage to do that and to share that, I hope just everyone takes that in. Like, it's just simply okay to ask for help, isn't it? Like,
Absolutely. It was, this probably the most important decision I made in the last 5 years was at that moment in time. But I think it's also, Sridhar, important to just put a bit of context around it. Is I could have Googled business help or business coach, and found 5,000 of them in Australia where I am, and worked with any of them. And I never did it because I knew that wasn't what I needed. I didn't need someone to say, here's a 5-step plan for you to make it to the end of next financial year. So when our mutual acquaintance had told me about you and how ruthless you can be in the pursuit of finding these breakthroughs, that's what I needed, right? I didn't need just. I have worked with business coaches. Over my years, I've seen counselors and psychologists for varying things. And it wasn't an off-the-shelf solution that I needed. I knew it wasn't. I needed somebody who was going to hold my head under the water until I got where I needed to go, and that's what we did. So asking for help is absolutely the most important first step. I think also it is understanding what you want to achieve, because maybe a Tony Robbins-esque online program will help it if all you need to do is develop a business plan, for example. Mm-hmm. But if you know that there are deeper issues that you want to unpack and unlock, then a kind of a $10.95 a month program isn't going to do it for you.
Yeah, it's like an up and down roller coaster kind of scenario in that regard. It can be. Well, I mean, you've said something else, though, as you talk, just more and more things are coming out, which is what I knew would happen, and I'm very appreciative. So I say thanks very much for doing it, and also just knowing the people that you'll help. Like, this podcast is reaching people, and they're contacting and saying, wow, if this person can do it, and what they shared was amazing. So it's actually changing lives, and that was the hope. But you said something about like the ruthlessness. I will say something about that, because I'm not sure how to feel about this, but you're not the first person on the podcast to mention that word. I'm not quite sure how to take it.
I won't get any more granular about it, but if you want me to get granular, I can.
that won't be necessary. No, it's mainly like, I think what I would explain is that, having been on the other side of suffering, I know that it's unnecessary. And so when you see that, like, I can see how it comes across as sometimes a ruthless, but it's just a stand. Like, I know you don't have to suffer, and you just don't. I don't care what you think you're going through, you don't have to suffer. And it's that stand I hold. And sometimes, though, we haven't learned that, right? And people's minds want to kind of buy into the old stuff again, and that's where it can seem ruth. I'm not saying you necessarily did it, because you didn't, but it's like that ruthlessness is that stand for, hey, and what's on the other side of suffering, right? You're sharing what's happened in a couple of years. What's on the other side of suffering? What's on the other side of that struggle? What's on the other side of that belief of imposter syndrome? You are on the other side of it. You getting Agency of the Year, and you being, I'm going to give you Dad of the Year after what I watched with you and your daughter, and that was incredible how you are. I got to see how you were with her, and that's what's on the other side. And it's like, well, what's the point of living life in the other way and getting stuck in there? And I know because of my past, but something else that's really important, and you insinuated it, you didn't say it directly, but you talked about showing up. And when you talk about that, I call it directness. You have to be open and courageous, and that's what you've brought to the equation, which is it's not saying that lightly. Like, it's kind of sometimes easier to stay stuck. It feels that way. It isn't, but it feels that way. But it takes openness, and it takes courage, right? Because some of the things we talked about are quite different, and it's an acknowledgement of you I want to give, is that you brought that from the start. You're just like, let's go, and that to me is what's allowed you, because you didn't just bring it in the beginning. You've stayed open and courageous through the conversation, and to me that's what's facilitating. That's why you're getting where you're getting, is that tremendous courage and openness that you've got.
Yeah, and I don't want the kind of ruthlessness to persist. It's more like, I know what sort of a person I am, Sridhar. I know it. I am I'm headstrong, and when you edit newspapers and you edit magazines, and you're running to 8 different deadlines every week, from copy deadlines to print deadlines to proof checks, etc., you have to rule with an iron rod, and that's what I did for most of my career. So I also knew that I needed somebody that was going to drive me and push me, because because I was going to be battling against myself for a lot of the way. So it's important that the kind of ruthlessness isn't kind of misinterpreted as inconsiderate or not compassionate. I knew I needed someone to drive me forward. And once we had that momentum, things have continued to evolve for the better ever since. I mean, down to, I see it daily. I see small things daily that I know would not have occurred 2 years ago had I not had an open mind and an understanding of what my abilities were to turn these opportunities into realities. So I'm very thankful for that.
Well, look, I mean, it's this is, I guess you call it the gift that I've got or whatever. I see who you are. Like when people come, I see who you are, and when you arrived, I see I see the challenges, and we obviously address them. We do what we need to, but I see through that, and I guess maybe it's my own past and seeing where I got myself, and you obviously didn't get where I did, but thankfully for you, but it's knowing that and seeing it, and I think what you're actually seeing is I just keep speaking to the true person. I keep speaking. I don't speak to stories, if that makes sense. Like, sure. I don't speak to identities. I don't speak to stories. I just keep speaking to the true person and those with courage. And that's what someone did for me, right? This is why I say I'm just sharing the gift that I'll say someone's did. I've had a few amazing teachers that have shared, what I've got me. And that's what I do is I just keep holding to that line, which can feel like it's a bit of a ruthlessness. But what I'm not doing is getting caught up in stories and kind of exacerbating stories like, oh, poor you, and that just doesn't help anyone, right? It's like, let's just keep having the conversation of here, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, that's who I really am. And then you step in, through your own courage and your own openness to things, you do that. You keep doing it until all of a sudden you're going, I'm this and I'm that. Well, that's who you always were. You're the guy. Like, you're amazing at what you do. That's who you always were. You just happen to be going through a really difficult time. But when we go through those difficult times, those stories are there, aren't they? That imposter, that that kind of thing. So I'd love to chat a little bit more about that. You don't have to say anything too personal,
Sure.
if whatever you want, wherever you want to go or not go. But I think if I'm listening to this and I haven't done any of this kind of thing, or I haven't done this, the mind shift journey, I want to know, how'd you go from that level of challenge to 2 years later saying everything in my life has changed, and I know you're telling the truth because I see it. What can you say to people? Like, you don't have to say step by step the process, but what did it entail in the sense of what you did to make that change?
I think it's everybody listening will know that they believe things about themselves. They have their own sort of, as we would describe them, stories where they believe that they're strong in certain areas or weak in certain areas. So there's a set of kind of suppositions that exist that everybody has about themselves. But deeper than that, there are beliefs that aren't visible. They run really deep, and they are what dictates the life that you have is, and it is. So the work that you and I did was, as soon as you met me, in fact, the first piece of work that we did, it wasn't around the challenges the business had or the restructuring or the need to cut headcount, or it was immediately into the work about myself and who I was and what was the foundation upon this reality existed. So just for a little bit of background, is I started as a journalist in the west of Ireland in the late 90s. I was an editor up until I launched my business 8 years ago. But I never had a degree in English or communications. So my entire life, I always felt like somebody was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, you shouldn't be in that seat, And the further I went in my career, the more I pushed it down, but it was always there. It never left. And even though I knew in myself that I held these limiting beliefs, I had no way of addressing them, and I didn't know how deep they went. So the kind of the first main piece of work that we did was understanding for me what those were. What was it that I believed about myself that formed as a child about who I was in the world, and taking that apart. And, I think it's important also to say that, that was a difficult process. We dug into exact moments in time when I realized certain things. And
Mhm.
I can remember sitting there, my palms clammy, and you're just pushing a little bit deeper, trying to get into it. But the flip side of that is that the upside to that process was immediate. I mean, in the same meeting, you were surfacing things about the way I believed about myself, and saying, like, not only are they not true, but they've never been true. And so it's not as if there was like months of difficult work for me to get to an epiphany. Like, the epiphanies happen in real time, in both micro and macro ways. And it is the sort of those just tumbling together and becoming a wave, which has just not stopped since it began. So you asked previously, like, we are still working together. It is because I suppose the parameters may have changed from 2 years ago, being understand myself better, so I can make more confident decisions and drive my business forward. But it is through the doing of that you unlock a more awareness about yourself. And like, I process things differently now. Like, my brain processes information differently.
Mhm.
So so yeah, that is why we're still going. I'm sorry if I've lost my train of thought
No,
there.
no, you just keep going. Just keep losing your train of thought because it's wonderful. And you're not losing anything. You're sharing things that I hope to get to, right? This podcast is something different. Like, we wanted to go deep. We want to really get the underlying things out of it. I really appreciate that you're going to this level. It's bringing up that a very wise teacher of mine. I've again had some incredible teachers in my time that have helped me along the journey. And one of them said, the only way out is through. And you reminded me of that just now, because we all create stuff, like, otherwise, why do we behave the way we do as kids? And why do we behave the way we do as we grow older? Like, why do we do things we don't really want to do? Why do we not go for things that we want to go for? Why do we talk ourselves out of stuff? And everyone's doing this, right? Everyone's mind is giving them a hard time. And basically, you just brought something up that's really important, Keith, because you said something about, like, we had to go really deep, right? You just said that beautifully. I'm not going to be able to say it the way you did, but you just, like, we have the suppositions we have about ourselves, and then we have the beliefs that are really, really deep inside. And what happens is we get those, right? And they're there, like you said earlier today in our conversation, that we don't even know that they're there often, with the things running our life that we're not aware. And I think if anybody's going, how does that work? You can just see where you're stopping yourself. They can look at where am I stopping myself? Where am I not doing things that I want to do? Where am I not going for my life the way that I want to? Well, why wouldn't you? Unless there's something going on inside. And those beliefs, like, what happens is we create them. We don't even know that they're there, but we know something is off. It's like you said about, we're obviously both migrants, and you start believing stuff, I don't belong, and all these kind of different things that you start, I'm not supposed to be here, like you said. And those things run deep. Like, for a child, that really hurts, right? And what happens is we stuff it in, and then we start going over the top of it and start, forming our strategies. I call them, I'm going to be really nice so people let me in, or I'm going to be a people pleaser so I can belong, and all these different things that we do. But in the end, we're not going through them, and they're still there, right? So in those quiet moments in the office, we're like, oh, I'm an imposter. Or, as you said, I'm waiting for somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, this isn't real. That is so common. Like, I've done this work long enough to know it's more common than you might think that people are feeling those things. And it really struck out. The time this teacher said this, she said, the only way out is through. And that's the work that you're doing. That's what you've just described as you went in there, you got it. Yeah, it's challenging to look at, wow, I had those beliefs. But I also love what you said, that when you went through it, how long did it take to get to the other side, right? Like, something that had been dictating your life, or a significant amount of how you lived your life, what happened when you addressed it on that level,
Yeah. I mean, I can give you a really simple example of how the mind shift it came into effect. I don't like talking about it all the time, but so we won this award in June, which is fine. But I'd been a finalist for 5 years in a row and had not engaged with it, had not engaged with the organizers, had not asked anybody for help, etc. Because I was added to that list because the editorial team at the publisher said we can't have a PR agency of the year and not have Reverb on the list. But it got to the point where I emailed them and said, I want you to take me off it because always the bridesmaid, but I'm never going to win. So just take me off. And then you and I started working together, and 12 months later we won the award. So, there's 5 years of me being in that ecosystem without engaging with it because I didn't believe I had what it took to win that award.
Which
and
is
then
the reason why you didn't, right? Because the only thing is you were good enough. You were always good enough. I mean, for them to say that you were always good enough to win it is just, this is how we can block our own. Yeah, I love that example because this is literally, people don't understand sometimes, but this is how we block our own progress. Like we can literally block ourselves from winning something because we're not a match for it. We're not putting it out there. And yeah, I love that, Keith. Like the moment you did, because that was just deserved, wasn't it? Like it had always been deserved. Like,
And I did one. You will remember this, I'm sure, Sridhar, but I had to do a roundtable about 18 months ago,
yeah,
and I had 7 CEOs around a table, and it is one of those things that would have caused me tremendous anxiety. Why am I here? Why am I hosting this conversation, etc. And I texted you on the train to Sydney to say,
yeah,
I've never been so relaxed. But importantly, the difference I think for my client in that example is that we had a 3-hour conversation on the kind of 7 key challenges for financial advice in the next 7 years, which was pre-AI. So there's a whole other batch of 7 challenges now for most businesses, right?
yeah.
Um, but the outcome from that workshop, because I went into it, it was the same conversation I would have had, but my mind was different. Is that the piece of work we produced has been, they want to replicate it in London. There are businesses in London that have contacted my client to ask where the ideas came from. They've never seen anything like it. So going into that roundtable with a different view of myself and what I was able to deliver, really, it wasn't just get through the 3-hour conversation and not choke. It was actually, I'm going to engineer the most progressive conversation on this topic that the industry has seen. And that was my goal going in. And it's 18 months later, and that business is still getting results from that white paper that we created. So,
Yeah.
just that 3-hour event in person with human beings, with me in a different frame of mind, created what I think is a vastly different outcome that would have occurred if I had gone in and I was full of self-doubt.
Well, to me, that is like the next major gem. Well, there's been several, but it's like if you think about it, I remember getting that text from you and I went, right, he's in, because we won't go into anything personal, but you said, I'm a bit nervous about this. And we took a look at, hey, what are you nervous about? What are you believing? Because you mentioned beliefs. And we did some work on that. And you got to a place where you shifted it. And I remember getting that text from you and you just saying, I'm on the train to go to do this. And I'm just in this great relaxed space. And I said, Keith's in, right? And then I remember you sent me a text afterwards saying how well it went and how it wasn't just, you didn't just get through it. It was this amazing, you were able to generate something that was really, really, as you say, still being talked about today. And I just remember that whole thing. And if you stop and think about it, you addressing something that wasn't true, that you were believing, if you stop and think about what was the trajectory if you showed up at that meeting nervous and, just look at all the stuff that happens. Maybe you don't get asked again, or maybe no one gets anything out of it. And, I think it's coming out in here. You're quite a humble guy, Keith, and I appreciate your sharing on here. You're quite humble, but the truth of it is you're really, really successful. You're really like a genius in your field and what you do. And it comes out, I think it's coming out here, so everybody probably can already see it. And it's like when that occurs, look at now the contribution that you have to an entire industry, right? Just by addressing that you were holding on to something that just wasn't the truth. And, this is why we do this podcast. This is why I show up every day to work, because think about the implications of that. Like,
Yeah.
what happens now
It's a
that you're,
sliding doors moment, right? It is the you know when I first got in touch with you to say you've been recommended, and I think I need the intense treatment treater. It was that's like a sliding doors moment, right? I could have just gone to a local business coach here in Newcastle in New South Wales and come up with a plan to consolidate debt and get out of your contracts for your rent and blah blah blah. But that's not what occurred. That's not what occurred. I had a clear idea of what I wanted to do. And you're right, I am humble. I mean, I know that I have potential and I know that I can create really good outcomes. Which is interesting because I've had my business for 8 years. You know, it's been 2 years that you and I have done work together, but I've run it for 6 years without that clarity and with
yeah,
that baggage and with those beliefs. But what's interesting, I think, about my business is that in almost all cases, I work with the CEOs of the companies. So these are listed companies, these are fintechs winning awards, these are banks. I've needed to sustain relationships with the absolute top tier of these organizations. I'm not just plugging into a marketing department and doing some social media copy. I'm literally reviewing 5-year bank strategy documents and coming up with ways that I think that they can adjust them. So I often find myself wondering, how did I do it for 6 years when I
yeah,
believed in my heart I shouldn't have been at the table?
yeah,
Whereas though that is even in the past 2 years, those relationships have blossomed. You know, I have a CEO in Melbourne who said he wants me to ring him every Monday morning because every time he interacts with me, I'm just full of positivity and great energy. And I think back to 2 years ago, prior to doing work with you, and you know, where was that Keith? Like, where
yeah.
was he? But he was always here. He just believed some stuff about himself that kind of
Yeah, it was identified, right? And you're bringing up another really important thing, Keith, because, you know, how do we make it through? Because a lot of people are stuck in these stories. And I think one thing you can see is that when you're in that, it's much more of a struggle. Like when you're, you know, when you're in that state, you said, how did I make it through for 6 years? You made it through sheer dedication and hard work and, you know, drive and those things. And, you know, this is a great opportunity because we talk about a lot of things that aren't common in here, and that's what the purpose is. But, you know, when I was coming up through learning about business success and all these, you know, those were the things that were touted as the drive, you know, be driven and work hard and all these things. And I'm like, but I just saw everyone struggling. I didn't see a lot of happy people. And I'm really dedicated, you know, after my years on the street and drugged out, I wanted to be happy. I didn't want to just be stressed out. And, you know, and I went that route at the start. I was working hard and I'm just like, but I'm not happy, right? I'm just not, none of this is making me happy. And I'm thankful that I had something in there that I wanted to be fulfilled. I wanted to love my life. And the thing about it is like when I was researching books, they were touting this stuff, work harder. And, you know, I've got people that contact me and say, oh, can you help me work harder? And I'm like, nah, I'm not the guy. I said, but if you want to be more successful, but have an easier time, then I can help you do that. But I don't want to help you work harder because you're probably already really stressed out already if you're working, you know, or can you help me, you know, do more in a day? But the thing is that we don't have to struggle to be successful. Like, you know, once you understand who you are, you start becoming successful, but it's easier. You're more in the flow. You show up to this round table and you're just you, right? You don't have to struggle and work hard. You just need to be yourself and not have those things in the way. And, you know, I think this is so important because a lot of times we think success has to be based on those things, but I've seen people time after time after time become so much more successful when they stop believing the stories that make them feel like they have to work hard, then they just get really inspired. They get mission, you know, I know you're a mission-focused guy. You've got great mission, you know, that you're up to in your life. And, you know, it's not that you can't do it, but how fun was it? You know, how fun is it to, you know, believe all these things and have to struggle to show up every day for it and, you know, get to the end of the day and feel like you're going to fall apart versus I can't wait to get up in the morning and get to it again.
Yeah, and I think there's two parts to that tree. There's the first part is being able to better achieve what you want to achieve out of life because you've got clarity. But I think there's also something to be said for shedding those beliefs. As in, yes, you have the upside is better clarity, make better decisions, create the life that you want. But there's also this sense of achievement in having shed those beliefs and having gone through that metamorphosis from this pre-work to post-work, Keith. And then there's a kind of a sense that is its own motivator, like that. Yeah. Feeling like I went through that process and better understood who I am, what I can do, what I want to do, what's important to me, all these things coming into clarity. So there is both the capability increase, but also the sense of achievement that comes with it. And I think maybe it's the latter is what helps sustain the former, is that I feel like I'm riding on a wave that having unlocked this version of myself, that I just want to keep doing that. I want to keep exploring where are the beliefs I have that are limiting me, and is it around family or my future? So I think that's what keeps me engaged, is the momentum I have from that sense of achievement, coupled with the obvious ability to live a better life, which is clear as day.
Well, I mean, wow. You mentioned a couple of times on today's call about business plans and business coaches and things like that. And, there's an element of the work that we obviously do that too. But the thing about it is, and what you're really bringing to light, which I'm very grateful for, because, it's such an opportunity, is that you can have all the business plans in the world. Like almost everybody goes to that, okay, I need a plan. I need the plan to get there. But the person or the people are conducting the plan. The people executing the plan, it's the people that are executing the plan. So if you've got people in there, like say you're a business owner, if you've got this great plan, but you feel like an imposter, you're the one that's trying to do the plan. And the plan isn't going to be enough to get you through. It's the person doing the plan. And that's what you're saying here is like we do two things in the work, like my very first mission statement. Don't think I've got to share my mission statement on this, so thank you, Keith, for the opportunity. My first mission statement was to help people to awaken to the truth of who they are and fulfill their maximum potential. Over the course of time, I worked with identity and ego. The word potential is it's a bit loaded. So I've changed that now, which is still the same. To people awaken, you get what I mean by that now, don't you? To awaken and connect with who you truly are and to live the greatest version of your life. So to me, that's the success part. But I am going to share this. I don't know if I should or not, but you're bringing it out of me, Keith. And I think it's probably known by now that I work with numbers of extremely highly successful people. And you might be surprised, and I think you're one of them here that's kind of saying this in some way, that have said that the inside connection that they have with themselves are worth infinitely more than the increased success that they got. And some of them are increasing their success significantly, right? They've come on the podcast and talked about it. But I've had some of them say, I'd actually give the success away for the internal connection that I now have, because I know that with the connection I've got, I'll just create the success anyway. And that's the missing link, isn't it? For all this drive and work harder and do all that, the missing link is the connection with the self that's so strong, that can do anything. And I just want to thank you for bringing that out, because as an opportunity for people watching, because it's everything at the end of the day.
Absolutely right. It's when you're head down, panic all around, don't know where the future lies, versus should my business go through the contortions I went through 2 years ago again, I would have no fear. I would have absolutely no panic, as long as all my team were looked after and had runways for their own lives. As long as I was happy and my family were happy, everything's going to be fine. I have whereas I think knowing yourself better means that you can achieve things and you can survive hardships and challenges. And I think that is, as you said, that is a lifelong thing. That is not tied to the business I own or the business I might own in the future, and that is tied to who I am,
Yeah.
and it persists. It's like I said earlier. It's every part of my life is different from dispelling those illegitimate beliefs I had about myself,
Yeah.
and yeah. So you are absolutely correct. The the sense of personal gain from having a better awareness of who I am and what drives me outweighs any amount of dollars coming on an invoice for sure.
And interestingly, it's it's the reason why it is highly, if my experience is standing true, with 30 years experience, it will be highly likely that you never go through those contortions again, precisely for that reason, because you don't need them. You've taken the opportunity for what you can get from them. You've self-connected. You know who you are. You're operating on a different plane, Keith. Like, that's what's apparent here today, is you're operating on a different plane. And why would you go back there? I don't see it. I don't see it
Yeah,
happening. In fact,
it's
I see the opposite.
the opposite. We're looking at maybe opening a London office so I can spend more time in Europe, closer to my family.
Yeah.
When we think back to 2 years ago, when we met, Jesus, seeing to the end of the financial year was difficult. Whereas now I'm looking at a 3 to 5 year plan that involves opening offices around the world. So yeah, I think the future is bright.
This is just so cool, Keith. Like, my dream here is just that people know who they are, that they know that they're unlimited and they can create the lives they want. And, to just come in for your honest sharing on here, this is exactly what we're getting. It's just that journey happening to you because of your courage, your honesty, the fact that you didn't say die, you didn't give up. Instead, you had the courage to say, I'm willing to have that tough session. I'm willing to say what's driving this and where it's going. And, this is just such a beautiful example of this in action. We can talk about it all day, but you're a living example of it. And, this is just what I don't know, you can tell I'm just really moved here because this is exactly what I'd hoped would come out on this podcast is stuff is real. When you know who you are, you get connected to who you are, then you can achieve anything in your life. There just isn't anything else about it. Like, you are an unlimited being, and if you just deal with those limitations that are going on in the mind, you free yourself up and you get to achieve everything you want and more. And I'm getting excited. You can probably tell because that's what you're just laying that out for us here. I don't know, you're just laying it out. Like, that's what's happened. And it will continue to happen, right? This is the start. This is 2 years and you're a young man. It's like, what's going to happen? You are. Let's not get into this. I can say that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
But,
yeah. It's your
well,
show.
how about
So
this? How about you have a long time to go, and if you've done this in 2 years, and you keep staying connected to your true self and not letting those stories run your life, where do you go?
wherever I
Where do you go in
want.
your life?
Yeah, wherever I want.
Wherever you go. I mean, it's yeah. Well, kind of feels like that's a great. We brought everything around. We just always like to end with one question,
Yeah.
which, yeah, different things come out, and the question is, if somebody's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, and they're just at the beginning of the journey. I know you've kind of spoken about it now, but they just go, well, I want to get on my path to living my unlimited life. What would you say to them? Like, what's that first step? Or what can they do? What's something that they can look at or do to get on their journey of living a life without limits?
I, th- I think it's I think maybe the most important first thing is to accept that you will have beliefs about yourself that you don't realize that you have. And as we've said, they show up as likely or surface level as imposter syndrome, but they often run deeper than that. And so I think the first thing is to accept that there will be things about yourself that you can discover if you're asked the right questions and you do the right kind of processes. But going into that, while also understanding what the benefits can be from dispelling those myths those self-belief myths, they can be really profound. So I think the first thing is to accept and understand that there will be deep discussions will occur with yourself, and maybe with yourself as a facilitator, whatever that may look like. But every single part of it is valuable, and when it comes together, the impacts can be profound, as in changing 40 years of thinking in a fairly short period of time. And once that switch is flicked in your head, it's like turning on God mode in a video game, right? It feels like there's nothing is going to phase you, nothing is impossible, nothing will stop you in your tracks, and that's a very powerful place to be, I think. As an individual, as a family member, as an employer, as a community participant, going into all of those different things with a belief in yourself that is rooted in truth, and is a world apart from what it's like without that.
Yeah. So I mean, just hearing connect with who you are and realize it's okay where you're at, and wow. Well, Keith, this has been really powerful. There's several things I want to thank you for. It's just being here for one, and sharing. This is my hope was I could share things because people know I'm the mindset guy, but when you come on and share your life, it again takes a lot of courage, and I have deep appreciation for you sharing that. Like, this whole thing is about how many people can we reach and help, and with some of the things that they can do to not do the everyday thing, to do something different and go on a different trajectory. But I also want to thank you for your courage. It's like who you've been, not just in being here and opening up, but just who you are and what you bring every time. Like, no matter what comes up, you keep addressing it. For being an example, like, you're just, you may not like to think of it this way, but you're just living your life, being who you are. You're an example to people now, because how many people go through those things that you did, and then that's it. That's the thing that took them out, or they become bitter, or they get addicted to something, and then they go on that route. And you're the one that is the example that you faced it. You said, look, I'm gonna get through this. And you haven't just got through it. You've used it as an opportunity to transform your life. So, you're a real example for people, and that's what we've got here today. So I want to thank you for who you are, and just say thank you tremendously for being on this podcast and sharing as honestly as you have. It's I knew this was going to be a great one, and it's been all of that and more.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it, Sridhar. I've enjoyed chatting to you too, and I think this entire conversation is a ringing endorsement for your approach to the work that you do. So I'm certainly grateful to have received that insight and wisdom, and helped me really recalibrate how I think about myself. And it is the gift that keeps on giving, and long may it continue. So thank you for both having me and for being a part of my life and helping me understand better who I am.
Awesome, Keith. Well, thank you again, and just thank you, and thanks everyone for watching this episode of The Mind Shift. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Mind Shift with Sridhar. Thanks.